Good morning. This is Eyisegun once again. It's been a while since I last put out a video, and that's mainly two reasons. Mainly because I've been sort of preoccupied with one or two other things, but also because I felt inspired or led to, or actually I felt directed to share on a particular subject matter, uh, which I was rather hesitant about. Uh, because I would have to, as it were, expose myself and share information that's maybe not in the public domain, or information that's a bit what I would deem sensitive. So it's taken me a while to concede that this is what I need to do. And I have to do it in order to buttress the points that I'm going to make, or in order to exemplify what I'm going to be talking about in this broadcast. And so today, I really want to talk to us about the importance of sharing Christ early. Some people say winning souls, but soul winning is God's responsibility. Our responsibility is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ very early. And I'm going to demonstrate through my life why this is important. A few things that I'm going to, or I intend to demonstrate through this discourse, is to demonstrate the what I would call the earthly benefit, the societal or the community benefit of a person getting saved, or hearing the gospel with an opportunity to get saved at an early age. Of course, the eternal benefit, and two, the power of early witness. What happens, when you share the gospel with people who are quite young in age, and also to demonstrate how Satan works and his approach to destroying a life from a very early age as well. So it's quite important that we understand that it's important to share your faith early. It's important to share our faith with people while they are still quite young. It's easy to think that we need to wait till they're a certain age, they're old enough, they're 30, 18, they're 19, they're 6, 17, but I think we can share our faith much earlier than that. And through my life, we will demonstrate why. Now, in order for me to make a full case, I'd have to give you a lot of historical information. So I was born in the 60s. I was born into a family of 6, and I am the fourth child. And as a child, by nature, I was a bit quiet, and I was gentle. I wasn't a rough child, and I was tender, and I was also, some would say, timid. And I went to school. I was born in England, and I went to school in England, and I didn't like discord or disharmony, and I didn't like wind, and I didn't like snow, thunder, or lightning. I was and I had to go to school on my own, and I quite remember when we got to when I got to school, because we weren't allowed to go to class. We had to stand in the school compound for assembly. And whilst, I wasn't boisterous as a child, so whilst boys would run around on the snow and fall over and slide and all those things, I was petrified of things like that. So we had two little trees, very small trees, and they were not far apart from each other. So I would stand in between them and hold the branches. And I'd stay there for about 10 minutes or whatever until assembly's called and all that. And I did that because I didn't want to fall over on the ice, and I didn't want anyone to crash into me and send me tumbling and I injure myself. So I was that kind of child. I was very calm and very, very civil, as a child. Um, and that was my nature. Um, and then my parents, in fact, as a child, because I was very civil and very what you would call timid. There used to be a guy in my school. I was the only black child in my school also, and there used to be this one chap who, he used to sort of slap me around the head every so often, and he used to follow me home, and whack me around the head, that sort of thing. And I didn't do anything about it, and I didn't tell my parents either. Uh, but what I did was, sometimes I'd give him my lunch money so that I don't, get a hiding on the way home. And so I was raised in that sort of environment. And I even remember two of my seniors at school who called me, three of them actually, who called me one day, and they showed me the nuts in the shell, the peanuts in a shell, which at that stage I had never seen before in the skin, but I had seen it in a picture. And they asked me if I knew how to eat it, and I said yes. Of course, I hadn't eaten the thing, but because I had it in my mind that I didn't want to let Africa down. I don't know where I got that from. And so I put the shell and everything in my mouth, not understanding that I had to, break the shell open and take the nuts out. And they stood there and they made me eat this thing. So, so I wasn't particularly treated very nicely. And I remember that they used to do things like, I'd be in the toilet, doing the number two, and they just kick the door in, because in those days the locks were fragile. And I'd be sitting on the seat and they just stand there and laugh and everything. So I came up in that sort of an environment, but now I didn't understand race or stuff like that. But what I did do to get back at them was where we lived, there were a lot of rich Jewish people, and particularly near my school. My house was not far from my school at all, but particularly on one or two streets away from my school, it was a very strong, wealthy Jewish population. So, and they used to park their posh cars outside, and sometimes they'd park them in their compounds, and sometimes they'd leave their cars on the street. So when I was going home, I had a matchstick that I brought from home, and I'd let down the air of their tires, and that was my way of getting back. Now I knew that the people that lived around there had to be white, so I didn't have a problem. It didn't occur to me that that the owner of the car might just be a black person. So that's how I got my own back. And one day when I was doing this, the chap that used to slap me around the head, he was riding past on a bike and he saw me, and he said he was going to follow me home and report me to my parents. And I thought, God, I'm going to die today. But luckily my parents were not, well, obviously my parents were not home. And he said he was going to come back and report me, but he never did. And so God delivered me, and I came up against that sort of, I came from that sort of background. The other thing also, being the only black child in the school, was in my class, they used to have some of the students would have parties towards the end of the term. And the procedure was that the parents of the child having the party would write a letter to the parents of the child being invited, and the letter would be given to the teacher, who would give it to the parent when they come to collect you from school. And your parent, and it says, what date, what time. It wasn't just an invitation, and what the arrangements were for picking up and dropping the kids. And your parents had to write back, and you'd have to give it to your teacher, who would give it to the parent of the child having the party. And I think there were about 3 of these parties, which I wasn't invited to. And so because they would leave a few minutes before the end of school, I would have to sit in the class. So I'd probably be the only child, or sometimes I was the only child. In fact, I was the only child on most occasions, who wasn't going to these parties because obviously I wasn't invited because obviously I was black, you know. And I think there was a lady who came one day to pick up her son, and she asked me why I wasn't going to the party, or why I hadn't been seen at any of the parties. And she I told her I wasn't invited, so she wrote a letter to my mum asking if I could come and spend the day with her son, you know, after school on a particular day, which I did. It was fantastic, you know. I mean, I had about 3 or 4 toys, you know, in my whole childhood. You know, this guy had a room full of toys, you know. So I'm saying all of this to give you a bit of a background. The story is going to progress, but what I really want you to pay attention to is what God has been able to do and what Satan was trying to do. That's the whole reason why I'm telling you this story, and I'm taking it from the beginning, because sometimes we need to begin to understand and see where Satan can begin to creep into the life of an individual, or begin to execute his own agenda, even though God has a plan. And that's why I started off from the beginning. And so this was my life. My parents, obviously being from Nigeria, decided to up sticks and move to Nigeria. And so we went. Nigeria was a revelation because nothing quite prepares you for that place, you know. And I had never been before. But and so I went to Nigeria, and you know, it was a bit tough. And then I fast forward to, and I was lucky in a sense that in my neighborhood where my father built his house, the people that lived to the right of me, there's a house with 4 flats in it, and all the people that lived there were returnees. In fact, there were 5 families that lived there, and they were all returnees. So that kind of helped in terms of friends and association, but the rest of the people were born in Nigeria, and they're very, very different to a child born in England. And so that chapter of my life began. I'll take it from now. There were a few things. Obviously, children coming from England. By Nigerian standards, they're probably weaker than Nigerian children. We're not as aggressive. We're kind of reserved and a bit more quiet, and we just don't. We're quite calm in comparison, at least at that time, you know. And we had this one child, you know, who ultimately became our ringleader, sort of thing. And you know, he was quite a tough child, you know. And one of the memorable things, one of the things I remember about him. Was when we were still kids. You know, I say we were kids. We're probably about 10 or 11, 10. I remember he was supposed to go home for lunch. You know, and you know, we all went. I mean, we all lived on the same street. He lived across the road. We all went to his house. You know, in my house there were specific meal times. You know, but in his house, I don't know. It was lunchtime, and I don't know what he was upset about. He was upset with his mother, and he refused to eat. And I'd never seen that before. Never. I'd just never seen that sort of anger. And he was really angry. And in his anger, he refused to eat, you know. I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I went home, and one day, I think probably about a day or 2 later, you know, I don't know what I was angry about. I wasn't directly angry at my mother. I couldn't even dare to be. But I was upset something. So I said I was not eating. Put it this way, I realize that I'm not the sort of person that can go without food if I'm hungry. So I don't care how hungry I am, you know, I will suspend my anger. Sorry, I don't care how angry I am, I'd suspend my anger and eat. And so that was how, that was a little bit of insight into my background. Because I don't want these videos to be more than 15 minutes, I'm going to pause here, and I will continue from where I left off in my next broadcast. Until then, shalom.